The alarms were screaming when I ran into the chamber, and for a moment, I thought the core had finally failed after 5,000 years of holding together by nothing but hope and old math. My name is Vren, and I am the lead architect of the Great Equation, a title that used to make me proud. Tonight, it just made me tired. The chamber around me was a cathedral of light and metal, built by my ancestors long before my species had even left our homeworld in large numbers. At its center hung the core, a sphere of pale energy that powered half of our settled systems, kept our star lanes stable, and connected our worlds through gates that should not have existed under any law we understood. There was only one problem: the final equation that would let us control the core safely, instead of just feeding it and hoping, had never been solved. Not once, not by anyone, not in 5,000 years. I watched the numbers spike again on the display in front of me, and my hands shook a little. Every 10 years or so, the core grew unstable for a short time, and every time, we lost people, engineers, friends. My own mentor had died trying to stabilize it 30 years ago, and I had promised myself I would finish what she started. I had failed too, just like everyone before me. That was when the door opened, and a boy walked in like he owned the place. He was human, 17 years old, one of the exchange students from Earth who had been allowed to observe our research as a gesture of goodwill between our peoples. His name was Kalen Brooks, and up until that moment, I had barely noticed him. He spent most of his time at the back of the room, drawing strange little diagrams on a tablet, or asking questions that seemed almost embarrassingly simple for someone standing inside the most advanced research facility in the galaxy. I did not have time for him tonight. The core was flashing red, and every one of my senior researchers was either shouting orders or staring at their screens in silence, the kind of silence that comes right before people accept that they are about to lose again. Kalen walked past two of my best scientists, past instruments that had taken decades to build, and stopped in front of the main console like he was looking at a puzzle in a magazine. I told him to move. He did not move. Instead, he asked me a question that nobody had asked in 5,000 years. He asked why we were trying to balance the core's energy on both sides at once, instead of letting one side fail on purpose. I remember laughing, not because it was funny, but because it sounded so wrong that my mind refused to take it seriously. Every equation, every model, every simulation for 5,000 years had been built on the idea that both sides of the core had to remain equal. That was the foundation. That was the law we never questioned, because questioning it seemed as pointless as questioning gravity. The alarms grew louder. A support beam near the east wall groaned, and dust fell from the ceiling in a fine gray rain. Someone screamed that we had less than 6 minutes before critical failure, the kind of failure that would not just kill the people in this room, but destroy the gate network connecting a dozen worlds. Kalen did not even flinch. He just tapped something into his tablet, humming quietly to himself, like he was doing homework instead of standing in the middle of a disaster. I grabbed his arm and told him this was not the time for games. He looked up at me, calm in a way that felt almost unnatural, and said something I will never forget. He said that back on Earth, when a machine breaks in a way you don't understand, sometimes the smartest thing to do is stop trying to fix it the same way it was built, and instead, give it a way to fail small, before it fails big. I did not understand what he meant. Not fully, not yet. But something in his voice made me let go of his arm. He pulled up a diagram on the main screen, a simple one, almost childish compared to the layered simulations my team had spent centuries refining. In his version, one side of the core was allowed to drop just slightly below balance, on purpose, in a controlled way, instead of forcing both sides to stay locked together no matter the cost. My chief engineer, an older woman named Dresa, who had spent her whole life on this project, shouted that it was reckless, that dropping either side even slightly could cause a full collapse. She was not wrong to be afraid. Every simulation we had ever run agreed with her. But the core was already collapsing. We had perhaps 4 minutes left, and every option we had tried before was already failing in front of us. Kalen asked for permission to run his idea on a shielded test channel, one that would not affect the main system if it failed. Dressa hesitated, looked at me, and I made the decision that would change everything. I told him to go ahead. He typed fast, faster than I expected from someone his age, faster than some of our own trained specialists. He was not solving grand equations or invoking ancient theorems. He was doing something almost embarrassingly practical, adjusting small values, watching how the system responded, adjusting again, like a person tuning an old radio instead of designing a bridge. The test channel flickered, then steadied. For the first time in 5,000 years, one side of the core dipped below balance without triggering a collapse. It simply leveled out on its own, like water finding a new path around a rock. The room went silent except for the alarms. Dressa stared at the screen, her mouth open, her hands frozen over her own controls. She had spent 40 years building models that all said this should be impossible, and now she was watching it happen in front of her, in under 2 minutes. I asked Kalen how he knew this would work, half expecting some secret human technology or hidden knowledge from Earth that we did not have access to. He shrugged and said he did not know it would work. He said he just thought it was worth trying, because on Earth, when something is broken badly enough, waiting for the perfect answer can be more dangerous than testing an imperfect one. There was no time to admire his answer. The core's main housing groaned again, louder this time, and Dressa shouted that we needed to apply his method to the real system now, or lose it completely. I gave the order. My hands were shaking as I authorized full access, something that had never been given to any exchange student before, let alone one so young. Kalen moved to the main console, and for the first time, I saw something like nervousness cross his face. This was no longer a shielded test. This was the real core, the one connected to every gate, every world, every life depending on it. He took a breath, adjusted the values the same way he had before, and initiated the sequence. The chamber shook. Lights along the walls dimmed, then surged, then dimmed again. For 3 long seconds, nothing on the screen made sense, numbers rising and falling in patterns none of us recognized. Dressa gripped the edge of her console so hard her knuckles turned pale. I stopped breathing. Then the numbers steadied. The alarms cut off, one by one, until the only sound left in the chamber was the soft, steady hum of the core settling into a stable rhythm none of us had ever heard it make before. Calm, balanced, but not locked, flexible, in a way our 5,000 years of research had never allowed it to be. Nobody spoke for almost a full minute. I think we were all afraid that speaking might break whatever had just happened. Dressa was the first to move, walking slowly toward the readouts, checking them again and again, as if she expected the good news to disappear. She turned to me with tears in her eyes and said the stability numbers were better than anything we had ever recorded, better than our best theoretical models had ever predicted possible. I looked at Kalen, who was now sitting on the edge of a console, looking exhausted but pleased with himself, like he had just finished a difficult exam instead of saving several worlds. I asked him again, gently this time, how a 17-year-old boy had solved something that generations of our greatest minds could not. He thought about it for a moment, then said that maybe it was because he did not know it was supposed to be impossible. He said back on Earth, people fail constantly, try again, fail differently, and keep going, and somewhere along the way that becomes normal instead of frightening. He said maybe we had spent so long trying to find the one perfect answer that we forgot it was okay to try something imperfect first. I did not have a response for that. Not right away. In the days that followed, our council reviewed everything Kalen had done, expecting to find some flaw, some hidden danger we had missed in the excitement of the moment. They found none. His method was not more advanced than ours. It was not built on some deeper mathematics we lacked. It was simply a different way of thinking, one that allowed for small failures instead of demanding perfect success on the first attempt. Word spread quickly across our worlds, and then beyond them, into the wider community of species that had watched humanity's arrival with curiosity and a fair amount of doubt. A species barely out of its own solar system, considered too young and too reckless for serious scientific work, had solved in minutes what our civilization could not solve in 5,000 years. I no longer believe humans are reckless, not the way I once did. I believe they are simply willing to be wrong quickly, so that they can become right faster than the rest of us ever thought possible. Kalen returned to his ordinary life among the exchange students soon after, still sketching strange diagrams in the back of the room, still asking simple questions that made our senior researchers pause before answering. He never acted as though he had done anything extraordinary. But every time I walk past the core now and hear its steady, balanced hum, I remember that night, and I remember a boy who looked at 5,000 years of fear and simply asked why we were so afraid to try something new. That, I have come to believe, may be the greatest discovery humanity has ever given us. Not a formula, not a machine. Just the quiet, stubborn courage to fail on purpose, so that something better could finally be born.